Well, hello, Evan, in NFC Championship Philadelphia. How you doing?
Doing good, especially after last night.
I bet you are. Well, heading to the Super Bowl, that's always exciting. And against the Chiefs, it should be a great game. But we're here for leaders who care. I'm sure a lot of the guys on the Eagles are leaders who care. But we're not talking to them today. We're talking to you. So welcome. I think people are going to see that you deserve to be here, and I think we're going to learn a lot, and we're gonna have some shared excess knowledge that people are going to get right out of this. So, how about if we start like this? First of all, shout out to my partner Ed for introducing us, and as he's got the big heart of everybody, that guy. So, well, good for him for doing that. And can you briefly introduce yourself? Just tell like where you live, where you're from, a little bit about family, maybe something you've never told anybody in the world and you want to reveal it right now and stuff like that. And then we'll get into the business stuff.
For sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me, Mark. My name's Evan Ehlers, and I'm 26 years old. I live
Yeah,
in Philadelphia.
rub it in. You're 26 years old. Way to
Yeah,
go.
only 26, and I'm on Leaders Who Care. So, but I'm living in West Philadelphia, and I'm the founder of a nonprofit called Sharing Excess. So, I'm originally from New York, but I moved to Philadelphia to go to school, to go to college at Drexel University, and that's actually where I started the organization and where I came up with the idea for Sharing Excess. And I've lived here ever since, and this is my city that I absolutely love, and I've spent the early career now of my life working to serve this city and create a model that hopefully I can bring to other cities and other states. But yeah, I'm just really happy to be here and happy that people care to hear our story and excited to tell it.
No, we're excited to have you because I think you're doing some great stuff. The city of brotherly love, right?
That's right.
Although I do remember, I'm a big hockey fan. It was the Broad Street Bullies, probably before your time, that they were a tough team, and there wasn't always brotherly love with those guys. But it was great. It was great to watch sometimes. So what were you like as a kid or a teenager? I'm tempted to ask, did you like eat all your vegetables, or did you feed it to the dog underneath the table? Were you planting seeds in a garden, or were you a sports guy? What were you?
That's yeah, it's a funny question. A lot of people ask if I was doing some kind of work related to Sharing Excess before I actually started the organization. But honestly, I was never particularly focused on food waste or hunger and food insecurity before starting Sharing Excess. I actually didn't even really volunteer that much. It wasn't something that was very available in my day-to-day life where I thought, had a thought in my head, oh, I should go and volunteer, for part of my day today. And that's unfortunate. I wish I spent more time doing what I'm doing now as a full-time job. But really, I was just a kid who loved nature. I loved going outside. I think I very early on started to develop a compassion for living things, whether that be people or animals, just through being really interested in animals originally, and wanting to get into some sort of work around the environment or working with animals. And I think that really helped to develop my sort of compassionate side. And then when I had this day that changed my life when I was in college, it really jumped Sharing Excess to the top of my priorities in my life, both as an organization, but also just as the two words itself, with sharing excess resources and finding ways to reutilize resources that are currently going to waste, to have a better alternative instead of throwing those resources away, helping the world and helping the community that I'm living in.
Okay,
By
hold that
sharing.
thought. Hold that thought, because you remind me of Jay Leno when he interviewed Robin Williams. Do you know who Robin Williams is?
Of course, yeah.
He would say, he'd say it was like the easiest interview in the world. He said, all I had to do was say, "Hey, Robin," and Robin took the whole thing. So I'm going to hold you to pause for a second. So when you were a kid, did you play sports? Were you a good kid? Did you get into trouble? What was the thing?
Yeah, my dad and my brother were always really big fans of hockey and baseball. So I would kind of get dragged to, baseball camps and things like that. Even though I wasn't particularly interested in playing sports, I was kind of like the kid that was out in the outfield playing with bugs in a tree, right, when I was supposed to be catching a ball. So always had it's always a part of my life, but honestly, I was never too good at sports, and I think that kind of led me to more alternative paths, where I was skateboarding and snowboarding and doing more of the kind of free spirit sports during high school and middle school, and ultimately it kind of led to me going to more alternative paths, even in what I chose for my job.
That explains some things. That moves a little bit ahead. So tell us a little bit about your journey. You started with entrepreneurship at Drexel. What was the motivation for going into that? And you were working during the same time as going to school quite a bit, were you not?
Yes. Yeah. So I knew that I wanted to study entrepreneurship just from my first job that I had as a high school student. I was a cashier in a grocery store, and I worked for hours and hours each day after school. And from those experiences, early days of being cashier in a grocery store, I realized that I didn't want to spend my life doing a job that I didn't feel was meaningful. I could literally count the hours going by and just think about how finite life was, and how I was standing there kind of just making money for a company that didn't really care about me, and I was just kind of like a cog in the machine. And I really knew that I wanted to spend my life and my time doing something that not only was meaningful, but also a path that I felt responsible for, and something that I could be in charge of, and not building somebody else's creation that ultimately I didn't fully believe in.
Interesting. You were working at a grocery store. I don't know. There must have been some vibe going on or something.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, definitely.
we founded Fifth Element on the basis that leaders in their businesses can do way better when they're doing good. And you're certainly showing up as a leader in one of the most critical issues that's happening today, and that is food security and food waste. Can you describe how sharing excess came about? Don't tell us all about what you do yet, but came about, the challenges and opportunities, if you will, that you had during the pandemic, as well as balancing, even though it's a nonprofit, you still have to balancing doing good with economics at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. So I kind of stumbled upon sharing excess as real passion of mine during college, and it came just through recognizing that I had my own personal food excess that I wanted to do something about. Basically, I came to the end of my third year at Drexel, and I realized that I had over 50 meal swipes in my dining account that I knew I wouldn't be able to use before the end of the term. And basically I made a spur of the moment decision that I didn't want those meals to go to waste. And every day I'd be walking to classes, and I'd see folks that are outside, asking for food and having signs, looking for a meal. And it just clicked that I could give this food a much better alternative than letting it go to waste by swiping it all out and giving it away. So that's what I did. I went into the dining halls the next day with these plastic bins that I used to move my stuff in and out of my dorm in college. And I filled all of those boxes with meals. I went to each station in the cafeteria, 3, 4, 5 times, and just filled it up with as much food as I could get. And I drove to Center City, Philadelphia, and I opened up the doors to my car and just started giving food out. And I didn't really have a very, solid system for doing this. I basically just started saying hi to, people on the street and saying, free food out loud, and that it's hot meals. And to my surprise, in about 10 minutes, there was an entire line of people that were coming up and getting this food. And in that same amount of time, listening to people and hearing that this, how thankful they were, and that this meal that I'm giving them is one of the only meals that they knew that they were getting that day, really made an impression on me, to see in the same city that I'm living in how much people actually needed it. So right then and there, in that first day that I started sharing excess with my meal swipes for my dining account, I got to see my own personal food excess, and then what a difference that can make for other people that are living in my same community. And by connecting them, I was able to kind of solve two different problems at once. Food's not going to waste, and people are getting fed. And so I fell in love with this idea, and I started to pursue it full time right after that day.
It's kind of interesting. I remember taking my kids a while back, one of the first few times, to a food bank or whatnot, and people were lined up, and they were younger. They were like 10, 11, whatever, and there was a lot of people there that I remember my kids saying, well, they don't look homeless. They don't look like they need food, because we all think it's like the desperate of the desperate. But even now, there's a whole lot of people that are just regular people that need it, right?
Exactly. Yeah, between 50 to 60% of the US population lives paycheck to paycheck. And food is often the very first basic necessity to be jeopardized if there's any sort of financial burden on an individual or family. So, you have families that have jobs, they have cars, they, even go on vacations. But food can still be that one thing that they're regularly skipping lunches, or, have smaller dinners, or choosing the cheapest possible option just to survive. And when we're wasting more than double the amount of food that we need to theoretically end food insecurity in our country, even those scenarios are not okay, right? And of course, we're talking about food that gets to people who have little or next to nothing, but also folks who have mortgages, have homes over their heads, they have a family of four, and maybe it's a single mother that's struggling to provide, and food could be that one thing that could really help them get through. We should be doing everything we can to get that food that is still edible to people who need it in those situations.
Yeah, it's fascinating because when you're in survivor mode and you're not being nourished, there's not you can't think, there's no creativity, there's no contribution to the community, there's no nothing. So it's not only that person that's missing, it's all of us that are missing stuff too. So it really does make a big impact, beyond even just the person that you're feeding. The fourth industrial revolution is basically about technology, AI, and open AI now, and all sorts of things. And they say that the fifth one is about humanity, kind of what we're talking about now. And in fact, that's one of the reasons for our names, Fifth Element Group. So we focus on impact and talent, and how both of those together, create sustainable results. There's an expression that you'll never work a day in your life if you love what you work, but you do. And I've seen that you actually took that to an exciting new level where you do what you love with the people you love. So talk about how you see impact and talent intersect, including with the people you love, different levels of love, obviously, the personal, the business, and the teamwork.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that working with people that you love is one of the best ways to enjoy what you do, but to also build really close teams where you can rely on each other and come to work every day and feel like you are hanging out with the people that you want to be with, and not the people that you want to hang out with after work is over. And of course, not everyone is going to be working with the same people that they want to hang out with all the time. But when you have that approach and you have this sort of ideal for bringing people together that do have those really great connections with each other already, like a father and son doing deliveries together, or a husband and wife working together and being a volunteer crew, where this is what brings them happiness and a relief and a joy in their relationship. Those sort of relationships that are founded in love, we find that can be really productive in terms of a social mission as well, where you're doing something that goes beyond the monetary pay. So you need to have those sort of other connections that keep you there and drive you forward. So it's been really fantastic to have people that love this mission so much that shared love that they have is shared by other people that are a part of it as well, and they end up becoming friends. They end up becoming part of their social lives is giving back as well. So for me personally, I ended up working with my girlfriend, and I didn't even know that would happen, right?
You didn't know she was your girlfriend? You didn't know that would happen?
No, so we were boyfriend and girlfriend actually before boyfriend and girlfriend before she started working for Sharing Excess. But because we had obviously this close connection, when the pandemic first hit and she was working in New York in the entertainment industry and lost her job, this was something because of her connection and her relationship with me, was like, okay, of course I have to help have to help my boyfriend who has an enormous amount of work, helping to move this food to people who need it, before it goes to waste. And at the same time, her job in the entertainment industry, there's total halt on basically all the work that can be done in entertainment. So it's a sort of no-brainer to help out in this. But she ended up being so good at it that she was my right hand and our operations director, and one of the only people that I could like physically be around, just because with COVID, we had to be so far away with everybody. So ended up that we were really compatible in terms of working together. And it's funny, most people when they start working for Sharing Excess have no idea that we're in any kind of relationship, and then when they find out, it like blows their minds. But it's yeah, for me personally, it's helped me to build my entire business to work with people that I really care about, because we have each other's backs, and we also understand each other not only on a formal standpoint but also the informal standpoint.
What's great about what you're saying is, an executive told me this a while back. He said, I want all my employees to leave going home feeling like they had a great day, feeling like they made a difference, feeling like it wasn't just a job. And the reason I bring that up, it's predominantly because of what you're saying is, if we really want sustainable results about positive impact, when everybody goes home, there's two choices. It's like, oh, work sucked, I'm so tired, get a beer, sit on the sofa, versus we got to have dinner together. I want to tell you what we did today over there. And we did this and that to help the community, and I'm getting a bonus because of it, whatever it may be. And the kids hear whichever choice you pick, basically. And that's where sustainability, just like you're doing, I think really happens, because if the kids are getting that, whether it's working for a corporation or a nonprofit or whatever, it's still the circle of sustaining that impact being made, and you still can make money and have a life. So good for you for doing that. And because I think it does go right into the community, even beyond what you're doing, obviously, with the great work about food. So kudos to you on that. And I think it makes a huge difference. So, we talked about, food security or insecurity, if you will, is a major crisis globally. Mm-hmm. With Sharing Excess, you've proven the model now in Philly, basically. Can you now describe really how it works? Can you describe like what the results look like? I don't want to give too many questions here, but it all comes together. Describe the balancing again of the economic and social impact as well. So people can really understand what it's about and how it goes.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, just looking at the numbers as a whole in the United States to begin with. So about 40% of the food that's produced in the United States goes to waste. It's about 120 billion pounds of food and has the potential to create over 90 billion meals. And at the same time, we have 38 million Americans that are experiencing food insecurity. So if you do the math on that, 90 billion meals is more than double the amount of food that's needed to theoretically provide every one of those 38 million people with 3 meals a day, 365 days a year. It's not to say that all of that food that's going to waste can be reutilized and repurposed for meals for other people. But only 4% of the food that goes to waste in the United States is actually being donated right now. And that's an egregiously low percent. And a lot of that just comes down to the logistics of getting that food to people who need it before it goes to waste. So that's the barrier that we're trying to solve at Sharing Excess, is what it takes to get perfectly edible food, these basic resources, to people who need them before they go to waste. Knowing that there's an abundance of it in some places and a scarcity of it in others, how do we make that logistical process more seamless to get that food to people who need it before it goes to waste? So that's what we do, whether it's us going and picking it up physically with our own vans and vehicles and drivers that are using our mobile app and volunteering, or if we're coordinating the pickup and delivery through logistics companies or major partnerships with brands and grocery stores and major wholesalers. It all comes down to whatever it takes to close that gap of identifying an excess and identifying a scarcity and connecting the two dots between. So in terms of the economics of it, there's about $617 billion worth of food that goes to waste. That's the economic value of food that goes to waste. So there's a lot of food left on the table and a lot of money left on the table when we're talking about food waste. And there's additional cost that comes with it, because when you discard this food, it also costs money for you to throw it away. So you have to call a dumpster, and that you're paying for that dumpster and food, especially produce and anything with water in it, is going to be really heavy, and it's going to cost a lot of money based on its weight. So we're actually able to make an impact on the economic side for food businesses by reducing their waste costs, by literally taking that food off of their hands as a donation, which saves them money. And then additionally, there's incentives from the local government and your state, and also the federal government, where they'll give you tax credits or tax deductions based on your food donations, and it going to a nonprofit like ours that can sign and say, yes, this food has been donated, and they can put in what their value was, right? What they paid for that, and them donating it, basically they're able to get a certain percentage of that back. So there's a lot of value in this sort of undervalued category of food that goes to waste, and we're able to not only use it as value for people, but also to save and retain value for food businesses, where we can make them more cost efficient and more environmentally friendly, and access some of those tax credits that are needed. A lot of times when businesses are about to waste this food and they need to recoup some sort of value, there's a huge amount of opportunity there as well.
Yeah, it's as we would say, it's a true omni win, and not to mention the benefits then of the people getting that food that you mentioned before, which is priceless. Not to steal from MasterCard, but it's priceless basically. And so yeah, it's amazing. In our, I know you know about our 100 billion meals challenge, platform that we're working on, and we're bringing together corporates, nonprofits, governments, family offices, investors, people with a lot of money that really do care about, transforming the ecosystem with solutions for both reasons that we talked about, 3 reasons: the economic, the social, and the environmental impact, basically. What do you see ahead as the potential to scale sharing access to other cities in the US and maybe even beyond?
Yeah, so there's food excess everywhere, right? Even though we're based in Philadelphia, food waste is something that's happening in every single community, and food insecurity is also happening in every community. There may be higher rates of food insecurity in other cities, maybe in rural areas as well, but this is happening everywhere. And so it's a matter of us being able to operate in those other cities and find a model where our work is able to be sustained, because ultimately it comes down to labor and logistics and transportation. That's our primary role. So in terms of growing to other cities, it really just depends on us finding a food source that is sustainable enough and committed enough for us to build operations around it. So for example, the Philadelphia Wholesale Produce Market is located in Southwest Philadelphia. That one location alone, we're able to rescue millions of pounds of fresh produce from there and build programming around it. We're also able to save this location money on its waste costs and get tax credits for its vendors. And that's a way that we're able to sort of sustain ourselves as a savings for those businesses, where they also contribute back and help to fund the operation as well. So if we can find those committed food partners in other cities, then we're able to build the programming around it and obviously get the food to people who need it. That side of things is actually, I don't want to say that it's easy, but there's a lot of need out there.
Yeah.
And so being able to offer free food to organizations that are serving hundreds or thousands of people, if we give them a call and say, hey, we have food for you to distribute, it's a pretty easy partnership to make. On the other side of things, for major food businesses, you have to have a program that really wraps around what they're doing. And we really pride ourselves on going into that business and making an operation that works really well for their day-to-day activities, and something that understands that their bottom line needs to work in order for this entire program to work. So those are sort of the 2 pieces that we balance, is finding a committed food partner, and then being able to get the funding to operate the labor and the logistics behind it. So this year we're really planning to grow across the East Coast, but there's also work that we can do just based here in Philadelphia, moving food in other states through partnerships that we have, like with Uber Freight, for example.
Sure.
So Uber obviously Uber moves people right through their regular rideshare app, but they also got into trucking and logistics, where now they move 53-foot trailers, and we have a partnership with them where they're able to move food for us anywhere in the United States if we can identify that excess and identify the scarcity of where we need to deliver it to.
Now, do you obviously different foods last different lengths of time, et cetera, et cetera. So you're able to, for lack of a better word, separate, distinguish, and based on something that can last longer, could potentially travel farther.
That's right. Yeah. And we're always trying to make the food go the shortest distance possible, just so
Right.
that it has less impact, right? Less transportation. Obviously there's impacts on the environment the further that food is traveling. So yeah, we base it on proximity for that reason, and then also for its perishability. This food ideally should be eaten in the next 24 to 48 hours. But we are only rescuing and delivering food that is still perfectly edible, and we are still very stringent on our quality standards. And everything that we rescue goes through 3 quality checks, both on the food donor, the company that's donating it, and making sure that it passes their quality check, our quality check as the folks that are distributing or actually transporting it, and then finally are the distributors. The organization that's receiving it is doing one final quality check to make sure that that food is still good, ready to be eaten for their particular community.
Super cool. Well, we're engaging with a lot of leaders who care, that are interested in the food waste and everything, as we've talked to some degree, some really big corporations and some other entrepreneurials. And one thing we talk about a lot with our clients is diversity, which on any executive search we do or any project, we're always trying to be as diverse as possible. Can you describe, have you seen the diversity of probably people and cultures and backgrounds and languages, et cetera, with everything you've been involved in? It must be pretty broad.
Absolutely, yes. And the organizations that are doing the best work are operating in communities where this work has been done for decades, right? In Black and Brown communities, Indigenous communities, Asian American, Latino communities that have had to do this work for decades and figure out the logistics to be able to support their own communities. And a lot of organizations like ours learn their best practices from what these communities have already done very well for decades. And this, our team is made up of folks that are working in, across 300 different organizations, right? Groups that have particular communities that they're focusing in on, and specific demographics, but then others that are, more broad across the board and trying to support, any community in a city. But we really do value those specific organizations that have lived true experience within their own network of folks, and the folks that are living there, the folks that know what kind of food that they want to see, and that we're able to work on our end to get that food for them and procure culturally appropriate diets whenever we can. So the diversity in general, whether you're talking about this kind of work or any kind of company or any kind of movement, is so important, because those perspectives collectively are the only way that anything is going to succeed. You really cannot succeed on this planet without having, deep rooted diversity, not only in your team, but also in your understanding and the mix and the meshing of those perspectives to create a solution that does respect all of those different cultures and identities that are involved in this work and involved in our community as a planet. So I think just bringing as many people together and finding ways to make those voices heard and make those voices equitably part of the leadership is so important. And as a nonprofit, you can do that through your board, you can do that through your team members, you can do that through your volunteers. And I really just love how our organization has been able to involve that in the very core of what we're doing from the start. But I'm super excited to see how it continues to flourish out as we grow nationally and just come in contact with different parts of the United States and even different countries where we're learning more from those cultures directly, whether it be in Mexico or Germany or Peru. We're starting to get folks that are interested in this concept, no matter what culture you're originally coming from.
Yeah, really well said. Way to go. There's so much. It's like breaking bread together, but in a different way, I guess. And it brings people together so much. So I love the way you phrased that, and I'm not going to mess it up by trying to say it myself. So it was brilliant. Last question on this part. In LA, we say we've got to leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So this will be the last question for this one. Klein told me in 2021, he said, Mark, the year 2020, it flew by slowly. And I went like this for a minute, like, damn, that's pretty cool and pretty right. Because it feels like 2020 was eons ago and yesterday almost at the same time.
Right.
So with that said, over what's happened over the last 3 years, can you share what you're most grateful for as well as what you're most hopeful for?
Absolutely. I'm most grateful for people and their belief and their like durability during this time of so many things changing and so much going away and so much sacrifice that's still in 2023, that we have people that are still even considering giving back and considering anything else besides their own personal survival or their own personal wealth and protection. The fact that we've kind of come out of the pandemic for the most part with a more open mind of how to take care of each other rather than how do I hoard personal resources for myself and make sure I'm okay because I've seen all the terrors of what happens when it goes wrong. I really do think that humanity has taken a shift to figure out how we can take care of more people in situations like that rather than an individualized, internalized scarcity mindset where everyone now is sort of sheltered and not so trusting. Seems like it's gone the other way. So I'm really grateful that work like ours has continued to flourish even after the pandemic, and it's not just something that's a PR stunt that folks want to be a part of giving back. Just well, it's a hot topic and the world is really suffering. It seems like a lot of these systems that were sort of jumped into overdrive during the pandemic have become sort of a status quo in how our society operates, whether that's feeding people or creating vaccines or creating technologies or more inclusive systems. I think it's starting to be more standard practice in just the beginning of new things and new technologies or new companies or new practices, new movements. So I love to see that those things that we've learned from this really tumultuous time have sort of ingrained in humanity to make us stronger and more compassionate as a whole.
Right on, man. Right on. Well, you definitely are a leader who cares. It's good. I've noticed young people kind of getting tired of saying that. I used to be one of those. Young people are, I think every young person has wanted to make a difference in their era, but I do think this is a different era, and you guys are seeing the urgency and the importance and whatnot. I'm doing it. So congrats. Proud that you're a leader who really does care, and your girlfriend too, and everybody else you're around. So keep making a difference, and thanks for joining us on the Leadership Care series, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Mark. I really appreciate it and look forward to next time.
You got it.